it's always, it sounds a mundane saying, that it's a pleasure and an honor to be presenting a speaker. Please, there's something very much more genuine than just ordinary cliche words. It's so wonderful to introduce somebody like Shaun Waters, and to be able to tell whoever is listening and who are going to listen that the people that really make an impact on your life are those whose lives you in some way touched. And through that touch, you came into a bond, into a real encounter with that person, which is what happened between Shaun and myself. And then, like in any logotherapy session, what matters is our encounter with our client. That somehow the real I and thou around the topic that is pivotal and that impacts on both their lives. When that happens, a process of healing is set on course. And like living waters that, wells out from the innermost bowels of the earth, nobody can stop that upwelling and that ongoing stream of life-giving waters, of the healing of that person from a past that may be so problematical, even traumatic and dark and lonely, that there is this kind of switching on of the light that was always dormantly there, always dormantly there. We all have a strong will to meaning. We cannot else but live without meaning in our lives. Otherwise we exist and we fumble around. It's meaning that gives our life direction. And it's this elicitation of meaning, this elucidation of meaning that just brings it out of its dormancy in your client and in somebody like Shaun. And I must say, then you see a process unfolding that you are but an observer of. Perhaps a bit of a facilitator, perhaps a bit of an affirmer, but it's got its own unique thrust forward, independent of your interaction with it, really, really. And that is why I'm so astounded to see what has happened to Shaun. I can't keep up with him. He's gone ahead in so many directions, in so many ways. It's astounding to me. I've got nothing to do with what he's doing. He's doing it all on his own. And it's astounding. And that's the story we are going to hear tonight. And Shaun, it's so great that you are here to tell it to us.
Thank you so much, Teria. Those are very, very kind words from my friend, my mentor, my facilitator. I'm truly humbled. Really, thank you. You are the beacon, the light, everything, and you're just the most amazing human being. And I've learned so much from you, and I continue to learn, and you're always in my little cart at the back on my journey. Thank you so much. So good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well. It is my turn tonight to be on the stage. It is quite unusual to tell a story about myself. It is difficult, and when you have to tell your own story, we all have masks, and we have literally the mask that we have to wear because of COVID. But when you have to unmask yourself and tell your story, it's sometimes not very easy. And one of the things I am trying to do is to write my biography, which has been taking a long, long time. Pan, I see you nodding your head there. But it takes a long time to write your own biography, because as the subject is tonight is know thyself. But do you know yourself? Do you really know yourself? So ladies and gents, when you look in that mirror in the morning, do you honestly talk to yourself? Do you honestly know yourself? Do you say, hi, Sean, good morning, how are you today? Do you do that? No, you don't. You're busy looking at the eye and you're trying to get that mascara going or whatever the case is, and you're concentrating on the eye. And you're not looking at other parts. You know, when we go to the dentist looks inside your mouth. And after 2 years, they say, oh my goodness, you've got this and you've got that and you've got the next thing. Do you know that you can look in your own mouth? But do you take the risk or take the chance to know yourself? And you actually look inside your mouth with a little mirror. Why can't you do that? Who says you can't do that? Of course you can. And you know what the scary part about knowing yourself or not knowing yourself is you can only see here. You don't know what people are seeing, the way you're reflecting and presenting yourself. And you're saying, oh, I've got these wrinkles here and I've got these wrinkles there and whatever. Is this a discovery that's all of a sudden? No, it's not a discovery that's all of a sudden. It's always been there. It's always developed. And all of these things is do you actually know yourself? So I'm challenging you tonight to understand and unpack and know who you are and know yourself. Yes, I am going to tell my story tonight. But first, I want to unpack for you the way I unpacked myself and discovered myself. So did I wake up one morning suddenly and say, oh, I've discovered myself. I found myself. No, it's a process. It's a process that you have to go through. So I'm going to ask you a question. How far back can you remember yourself? Well, I can only remember 4 years when I was 4 years old. All of those who can think 4 years and younger, put up your hand, please. Coral, you can go back further. But you cannot go back to 6 months and you cannot go back to 1 year because that's part of the process. Because that's past, it's gone, it is over. But now it's the new process. So when you reach these milestones of when you were 18, when you were 30, when you were 40, when you're 50, when you're 60, when you're 70, when you're 80, and when you're 90, do you actually look at and remember and think about those milestones? Do you write about the last decade? But do you really know yourself? And do you understand about where you were and where you're going? Do you de-reflect? Do you reflect? Now, these are interesting considerations that we need to know. And the biggest challenge, of course, is that you cannot see yourself. So I'm challenging all of you tonight to go to the mirror tomorrow morning and to talk to yourself. To say, hi, Sean, good morning, and how are you today? Have a lovely day today. What are we going to be doing today? And actually see the reaction of yourself and talking. You know, when a dog goes to look at him or herself in the mirror, they get a fright. They say, oh, this is me, this is the dog, woof, woof. But do you look at yourself and go, woof, woof? No, because you're concentrating on just that particular part. And you know what's so important? Are our senses. And knowing yourself as having your senses in sync. So we have to see, we have to hear, we have all these senses that are in sync or should be in sync. And that is what's so challenging about not getting our senses in sync. So do you know something? That's the most terrible email that you write and the most terrible message that you write is normally because there's a bad smell in the room. Proven, evidence-based. It's the surrounding of the smell, the noises, all of these things affect you. It affects your senses. If you touch something that you don't like, don't you do that? Or something's hot, you go away? And then, isn't that a bit traumatic? Don't you take a bit of time to recover? And you're in a bit of shock. But these senses are just so important. Hearing, seeing, touching, those who can see, those who can't see, those who can't hear, those who can hear. And all of these senses are just so very, very important. And it's called sensiology. And sensiology is one of the most important things that we have in terms of being a human being. And it goes back from time of evolution to where we are today. And that's how we adapt. And that's what's so important. But that's knowing yourself, knowing what senses you have. And as you get older, your senses change. Maybe your sense of smell isn't as good as it used to be. Maybe your hearing isn't as good. I've got a hearing aid because I can't do that. But, interestingly enough, I've got one hearing aid, but the other ear is now deteriorating because the one that has the hearing aid is able to pick it up. So it's all about repetition and changing and balancing. And this is so very, very important. And then, do you just travel along in this vessel? Is this vessel just going along? And are you just pressing autopilot and expecting everything to happen? Well, the body does and the brain does. Do you know why? When there's a stress, we have a stress response. Hallelujah. And with this stress response, what happens? Everything starts happening. The endorphins go here, this goes there, the cytokine storm, all of these start happening and all controlled because it can deal with a stress response because that's negative. And you know what? The brain absolutely loves negativity. Why? Because it's tuned to have negativity. Is the brain tuned in to have positivity? Bit of a challenge because now the brain has to start thinking. All right. And then we have the two hemispheres. So what happens when the brain starts thinking? It has to get in sync between the two hemispheres of the balance of what is going on. But if you don't help your brain to do that, then you're not going to be able to help yourself to do that. And with these two things happening, it's very, very difficult. And our brain starts deteriorating. We don't lose actual neurons. The dendrites do die to a certain extent. And from a brain injury, yes, they do die. But thank goodness, we do have a thing called neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is rewiring the brain in simple terms, or rewiring the neural pathways. And those neural pathways can be rewired. How can they be rewired? They can be rewired language, numbers, travel, and there are two other aspects to it: exercise and brain breathing. We need to allow our brain to breathe. We don't give it a chance. We overload the brain. We have brain overload. And brain overload is called stress. But it's nice to capture a word, isn't it? But it's brain overload. The same as you're overloading everything. You're saying, oh, but I'm so stressed today. What does that really mean to you? Do I understand your stress? Do you know your stress? Only you know your stress. You know how much you can take. But do you challenge yourself? Do you take up the challenge to go and challenge yourself and to do it? And are there things about discovering yourself? Of course there are. So in all of this of knowing yourself, you're probably thinking, well, Sean, that's fine. We know all of this is evidence-based. You can find out. But how do we fix it? And Mr. Fix-It is there. It's clear as day. One of the most important things about trying to get ourselves to where we should be is called attitude. And attitude is one of my most favorite subjects. And my subject and my mantra is always, attitude is latitude. And if you've got attitude, you'll be able to do anything. So Viktor Frankl's definition of freedom of will from Frankl 1970 states that the freedom with which he is concerned is not freedom from conditions, but the freedom to choose one's attitude toward whatever conditions exist, the freedom to take a stand. And isn't that so important? And then we go on to say that Frankl calls attitude the third way to find meaning in unavoidable suffering, the noblest appreciation of the meaning and the deepest possible meaning. When a person chooses to rise above the circumstance of their life and uses the experience as an opportunity to grow, then the attitude that that person takes towards suffering turns the situation into an achievement, which is a triumph of heroism. And that's what it's about. It's the meaning, it's the attitude, it's how you adopt and how you do these things. So what do we have? We have an explicit measure and we have an implicit measure. And in terms of attitude, we have what we call the ABC. And in terms of the ABC, we're going to discover that right now. And in terms of the ABC, we then have goals, and we do goals and goal setting. But you say, but Sean, you talk about goals. Where are we going with this? So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to help you to create your own ID, your own identity. Have you all got pen and paper? And a pen and paper? We're going to do a little exercise. And we're going to discover your own identity. Tell me when you're ready. Just give me a thumbs up. You ready, Taria? Okay. So we have a particular model which we call a defining measure called SWOT, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. That's what we have. But we want to build tonight and discover our strengths. So I'm going to ask you in 1 minute, I'll tell you when I'm ready. I want you to write down your 5 strengths. Starting from now in 1 minute, please. And now next to each strength, I want you to put a color. So the colors you have are blue, yellow, green, orange, and red. I want you to put a color next to your strength. And when you're finished, you can just give me a thumbs up.
I'm sorry, Sean. What are the colors, please?
The colors are blue, yellow, green, orange, and red.
Can we use the same thing more than once?
Sorry, Pan, please repeat.
Can we use the same color more than once?
You can, it's up to you. I just said there are 5 colors to allocate. Right, so you should be finished by now. Thank you very much. Pens down, and let's talk. That was a little challenging, was it not? If I had to ask you to write down your 5 weaknesses in 1 minute, my goodness, you'd have 10 by the time the 1 minute was up. And what color would you put against the weaknesses? I'm going to leave it to you. So the strengths that you have there are the strengths and the colors that is you. So let's finish the identity. In 1 minute, I now want you to write down your 5 values. Your 5 values. That can be of life, that can be of business, it can be anything, but your 5 values right now, today. If you want to, you can also put a color next to them. The same colors apply. Thank you, pens down. Now I want you to reflect, and I want you to have a look at your strengths and your values. Do you see how you're learning about yourself? Do you see the kind of where you're going? Do you see your strengths? Do you see your values? And there's so many values that you can write down. And I also challenge you, in 5 years' time, Write down your values in 5 years' time, because they're going to change. Not every year necessarily, but in 5 years' time, because things change, circumstances change, but your strengths will never change. So your strengths become your fingerprint. That is what actually happens. So that is hopefully an exercise which you understand. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to talk to you about your vital signs. So your vital signs are the following: are your values, your interests, your temperament, around the clock, life mission, goals, and strength skills. But I'm going to go through slowly, just don't worry. So V stands for values. And those are the values or your value determination guideline. And those will tell you in terms of your vital signs what your values are. I is for interests. And your interests include your passions, your hobbies, anything else that draws your attention. T is for temperament. It is the standard dynamic feature of behavior, such as energetic aspects, plasticity, sensitivity. The A stands for around-the-clock activities. This is the category you like to do things, you like your biorythms, are you in tune? And L is for life mission and meaningful goals. What is your life's mission? Have you ever written your own mission statement? You know, in a business, people companies write down their vision and their mission statement. Have you written your own vision and mission statement? Maybe you should consider doing that. And then align with it and see where you go. And S stands for strengths. And the strengths and skills are just so very important. So your vitals with the S is your strengths, and to go from there. Did you find that interesting? Yep, because that's knowing yourself. That's called creating your identity and your fingerprint. Then there's one other thing which we talk about in logotherapy, which I absolutely love, and that's called the PIL test, the Purpose in Life test. The Purpose in Life test is one of the most amazing ones, and I challenge you to actually fill out one for yourself by Crumborough and McCulloch. And that dates back to 1964, referring to Frankl. What I will do, by the way, and this is a good time to tell you, everything that I'm telling you now is available on PDF. So if you want to have anything of any one of these particular aspects, I've obviously have a particular paper on it. I see you smiling, Tyria. I have a particular paper on it, and I can send you gladly, with my pleasure, a PDF about all in each one of these subjects. So I challenge you to do the Purpose in Life test for yourself. And then I also challenge you to give it to somebody else and let them do the Purpose in Life test. So that's another aspect about learning about yourself and learning about others. And then what's the other part that hurts us a lot? It's our habits, our behavior. So we have good habits and we have bad habits, do we not? And the habits is a very interesting subject, because there only can be good and bad habits. But how do we change habits? Does anyone perhaps know how we change habits? Repetitions. By repeating a good habit, we can change the bad habit. And that's how we do it, by repeating the good habit. And it's really that simple. It's really that simple. And it's changed behavior. And by changing your behavior, you change your habits. So when you get home into your house, do you take off your shoes and your socks? You take off your stockings, ladies? I don't know. Do you? Isn't that something different? Do you always wear your watch on your left arm, or do you wear it on your right arm? Why don't you give yourself a break and wear it on the other arm? And when you eat with a knife and fork, normally the fork is in the left and the knife is in the right, is it not? So tonight, why don't you change it around? And you know what you're actually doing? You're changing your brain. Your brain can be out of this routine, because the brain, I told you, loves this negativity, loves routine, it loves all of these things. It is so analytical and does this and does that. But you need to let your brain breathe. So of course, mindfulness and yoga and dancing is all really, really good. But it's changing the tune. So when you have doing music or you listen to something, change the tune. And we always say we like a particular type of genre. But why don't you try another genre? Maybe you don't like it, but just try and listen to it. Just try and be tolerant. And we're not tolerant with ourselves. We're not tolerant with others. And that's what actually happens, is that we are not tolerant with ourselves. And we become angry and we become intolerant with other people. And why don't we get on with each other in this world? It's actually quite simple. Everybody has a different culture, and there are different cultures. You're brought up in a different way. And it's the mixing of cultures that is the challenge of accepting that this is their culture. This is my culture. But one thing will not change. You will never compromise on your values. You will never compromise on your strengths. And those are the two things that should be first and foremost in terms of what happens. And it's all about thinking. How do you think? Do you really think? For me, do you really think? So thinking is a whole subject on its own. It's called cognitology. And that is an amazing subject. How did Da Vinci come up with all those incredible inventions? What did he do? In everything, there's one secret to Da Vinci. He wrote everything down and he drew everything that he could draw and imagine. And that's what Da Vinci was all about. So we always say, we've got so much in our head. I told you, you've got brain overload. Why you put everything in the brain? We don't need everything in the brain right now. Take it and put it into a book. Write a little book, keep it next to your bed, do whatever you need to do, because there's some wonderful thing that you're going to need inside there someday. And this is also part of you. Not a diary, a journal. And you write down, and if you ever want to know about Da Vinci, he had thousands of these books that he wrote and he drew and he discovered. And all of that thinking, he formulated whatever he could do. We all have this ability to be able to do that because we've got to stop this brain overload. The brain needs to breathe. And then, as I mentioned to you, the brain needs to be exercised. So in terms of exercising the brain, as I told you before, we have the neural pathways of language and numbers, which are the two most important aspects of being able to do that. Playing cards, doing all these things that you like can help you to be active and to read. These things is what it's all about. And why don't you actually define what you like? Why don't you write down what you like? You say, I like this, I like that, I like that, whatever. But what do you really like? What do you mean you like that? Why don't you invest and research that? Research that like you do everything else. Is you research what you like. If you collect something, then collect it, you investigate it, you know it all has a price at the end of the day. So what's your price? What is your price? So whenever we come to practice, whenever we do anything in life, we always say, how much are you worth per hour? That's an interesting subject, is it not? How much are you worth an hour? So in 60 seconds, 1 minute, and 60 minutes, what are you worth? Forget about anything else that you've been told. I'm worth 600 an hour, my fees are this, my fees are that. Why don't you take that and put it aside? And why don't you really work out what you are worth in terms of a monetary value? Because if you work out what you're worth, you'll find that maybe you're worth 10,000 Rand an hour. Wonderful. Why don't you do that exercise? Why don't you take the chance and put everything else aside? So, do you really know yourself? Are you scared of your capabilities? Are you scared of taking a risk? We don't want to take a risk. We want to take moderate. Moderate's fine. It's in the middle. It's moderate. It's fine. No. One higher. What's the downside of something? We're not really sure. We don't want to take a risk. We want to follow. And why do we have leaders today? We say, can a leader be born? It's a rhetorical question. Can a leader be born? Is a leader a leader? You're all leaders. You're leaders of your own life. Each one of you are unique. You're the leader of your own life. But you don't know how to lead yourself. You just follow yourself wherever it looks nice. But take a step backwards. And when you walk, do you look up or do you look down? You're scared of falling, aren't you? Yes, we're all scared of falling. But why don't you stop? Take a second, breathe, and look up, look around, left, right. When you want to see if if it's safe to cross over the street, don't you look left and right? Well, why don't you do that when you're walking along as well? Look left and right, enjoy, and smell what's happening. Taste what's happening. Enjoy what life has to give to you. You know, that's one of the problems that I had. I was taking too much out of life. And I felt that I could be in control of it. You can't be in control. There's so much around us. And that's what it's all about. So discovering yourself and knowing yourself is just so lovely and beautiful. So when you come home, instead of going to take your shoes off first, go and take them off at the grass, sit down and sit in the mud and just enjoy the grass in your feet. Wouldn't that be great? Oh, I'm going to get dirty. Oh, my hair is going to get blown away. Take the chance, take the risk. It's nice sometimes to do that. And don't we love little kids when they play around in the mud and all of that, and they get all dirty, and whatever the case is, they're so free and easy. There's no reason that at the age of whatever age you are, you can also be free and easy. Of course you can be free and easy. Who's stopping you? You. You're stopping yourself from enjoying yourself. Do you ever laugh at yourself? Well, maybe they'll bring the white coats along because, you know, maybe I need to be locked up. I was seen laughing at myself. No. Enjoy yourself. Have fun with yourself. And that's what it's all about. But there's also change. If you really want to change, what do? You turn around 360 degrees. Wow. Wow. Is that difficult? So when there's a problem, when there's a challenge, when there's something traumatic, what happens? It's traumatic, it's happened. 2 words. Actually 3. Acknowledge it, accept it, and your attitude towards that. Acknowledge and accept. Because acknowledge and accepting something are very, very powerful words, but those are words that will free you and help you to deal and find meaning in your suffering and find meaning in whatever there is, because that is what it's about. We don't give ourselves enough time to just be there, think, brain breathe, and that's what it's all about. So that's the first part of what I wanted to tell you about knowing yourself. Are there any questions that anybody wants to ask?
You already told your story in so many ways, but now we want to have the context.
Thank you, Tyria. In all of those ways, that's how one discovers oneself, and that's the way I discovered myself. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. My journey was that I was a very naughty boy. I was Humpty Dumpty and I fell. And when Humpty Dumpty falls, what happens? It can never be put back together again. But it's about one's attitude, about where you want to, if you want to pick yourself up. And I had to pick up myself by my bootstraps. Literally, I did a lot of harm to my family, a little harm to myself. I did stupid things, real stupid things. And unfortunately, it was quite late in life. Then one day, I said to my late father, Dad, would you mind? I think there's a book called Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Could you please buy that for me? And at this juncture, I want to just tell you about my late father who passed away 2 years ago at the age of 92. Next to his bed, he's charging a Kindle and his smartphone. And just before he really got sick, because his mind was absolutely amazing at the age of 92, I found him one day and I said, Hi, Dad, how's the pain today? How are you doing? He said, Sean, the pain is horrific today. But I've got a worse problem. I need to go and get the connectivity on my computer sorted out. That was my problem. And that was on my late father at 92. He was on Facebook. He had people on Facebook. He had friends on Facebook. His mind was always looking for something. And when he retired, he never retired. He went to go and play golf. He made friends. He did all of these wonderful things. And he started writing and he wrote. So that's my late father. So my late father then, in around about August of 2011, he went to go and buy me Man's Search for Meaning. Well, I read it and I read it and I read it. And there was just so much that resonated with me. Absolutely so much. And then I said to my dad, Dad, you know, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, about logotherapy. And one day my dad came to see me was October 2011, and he put into my hands Teria Chantal, The Quest for Destiny book, with a personal message inside. You are on your own quest. One I have full faith in, Teria Chantal. And that changed, from that day on, that really changed my life. It really, really changed my life. I decided that I have to have a new life. I have to give back to life instead of taking from life. I then had the fortunate pleasure of meeting Pam, and Pam put me onto the first course. And wow, all of a sudden I had to go back and start writing assignments and doing these kind of things. I was not used to this. I've been in business for many, many years. I was a director of certain companies. I was involved in so many things. In fact, I have a clothing degree in clothing technology. I was involved with Edgar's. I was the merchandise manager for Edgar's, buyer. I also was involved with Aka Joe. You may know the clothing stores. So I'm very involved in all of the clothing aspects. And in these clothing aspects, I never had to study. I had to go back to study necessarily. So what I had to do now was to knuckle down and start doing these courses. And then I met Teria in person. And I met Pan in person at the introductory course. And I was just blown away by what they were sharing and what I was learning about logotherapy and where it is and my own meaning, my own journey. And that was the kickstart to everything. And to move along from the introductory through to the advanced. The advanced, I had to come up with a workshop subject because I enjoyed research, and having worked in businesses in the commercial side of life, I wanted to come up with a particular theme. And I know that there is so much stress around, which I had seen in businesses, and I decided that this was going to be my genre as such, or the area of which I was going to study and I was going to do. And I did my advanced course. I presented my workshop. It was scary to present a workshop. I presented to many other people in business and in figures and this and that and whatever. But to deliver me to an audience was very difficult. Just hold one sec. Excuse me. So that was really difficult. Anyway, I did that, and I presented my stress, the impact of stress on our lives, and that's what I did. And then the very next year, of course, it is the diplomat course in research, and I had to write a thesis. I studied this thesis. I researched. I went to visit people that were experts in their field about stress. But what the experts in my particular subject was based on technostressology. What is technostressology? It's a study of technostress, techno-addiction, and techno-psychotherapy. Because what happened was technostress is technological stress. Techno-addiction, we all know what techno-addiction is. And then somebody said to me, but Sean, this is all well and good, but I mean, how are we going to tie this up? And of course, the obvious thing was psychotherapy, which is actually logotherapy. So I suppose I should call it techno-logotherapy, but I'll call it techno-psychotherapy. And I went to go and study about all the technological stresses and the people in the business. I even took out the guts to phoning up Apple, and I found them up in Silicon Valley. And I said, hi, my name is Sean Waters from South Africa. I'm doing a research project. Please, is it possible to speak to somebody in R&D, being research and development? Well, I don't know anybody from South Africa. Not really interested. Thank you and goodbye. Boom. That was the end of the story. That was the story about Apple. But when I spoke to the guys at Microsoft, I had welcomed in open arms. Spoke to people at Samsung in open arms. And it's interesting, the dynamics, which I learned. And this is what I want to share with you. When you speak to Apple and you go to an Apple store, don't you find it a very sterile type atmosphere? Was Steve Jobs, with respect, a very sterile kind of down the line kind of guy? Bill Gates, Microsoft, kind of different. Let's put away the moment for the divorce, but let's think about Microsoft. Isn't his team molded in there? So how important is a leader in terms of a business? If you go and speak to the guys at Google, if you go and speak at Amazon, Jeff Bezos, you go and speak to Elon Musk, isn't a leadership so very important? They know themselves. They know their capabilities, and they practice it every single day. So, techno-aesthesiology thesis was written, and it was every aspect of the principles of logotherapy is inside techno-psychotherapy. And after that, well, I had a call from a publisher in Latvia, Lambert Publishing, and they said, you know, Sean, we've heard about you, and would it be possible that we can perhaps do a collaboration and publish your book? And well, I thought, well, I don't know, you know, I'm not too sure about this. My grammar's not so good. I immediately got onto Grammarly, which I still have today. I've processed more than 1 million words on Grammarly, and Grammarly is my savior. Anyway, I redid the book. I edited it, did whatever I could, and sent it to the publisher, and boom, there's my book published on Lambert Publishing. Well, I was blown away. I was totally blown away. The thing that blew away me more was the price of the book, because books, as we know, are so very expensive, and everything is costed in euros. So my book is very expensive. But then I decided that I need to do a South African publication, and I produced my own publication, which I published some books, but I haven't yet gone to the second part of it, of a revised edition. And then just bring it up at the speed, about 2-3 weeks ago, my publisher called me and sent me and said, Sean, just excuse me, but by the way, we've translated your book into 7 languages. 7 languages. So I spent time with them. We had to do a couple of tweaks because, you know, technostressology in some languages, like in Russian, for example, is a very difficult word to try and get across. So there was a lot of going backwards and forwards to try and share all of these challenging words related to that. So I'm here to tell you that my book now it actually is in 8 languages. So I was thinking that maybe the next step is to do it in Afrikaans and Hebrew, who knows? But that's the publishing part of where I am. But then, how do I get all this knowledge? Well, I decided that I'm going to call myself a stress specialist practitioner. And to be a stress specialist practitioner, it's not all about the psychological aspect, it's about the physiological aspect, it's about behaviors, it's about emotions, about all of that. And I just decided to start studying neuroscience, teach myself neuroscience. And I then came into contact with Dr. Ian Weinberg, who runs the psychoneuroimmunology program. I got involved with that. And today I love the brain, I love neuroscience. I'm involved with so many neuroscience projects as well, which I absolutely love. And then of course there's the APA related to qualifications, the American Psychological Association, which the Viktor Frankl Institute America is an approved training course with the APA. So I got involved, and then it started getting involved in Division 29. What is Division 29? It's the Advancement of Psychotherapy, Society for the Advancement of Psychotherapy, Division 29, the American Psychological Institute of Association. And then what happened was I said, well, you know, is there any way we can perhaps start a South African chapter? So no, they weren't very keen about that, but Sean, please would you join us on the International Affairs Committee? So today I serve on the International Committee Affairs part of Division 29. We then recently had the APA 2021 conference, and I was selected to be one of the participants in this, and my particular subject was related to COVID-19 and how we use teletherapy and technological practice in practice of teletherapy, and that was basically my subject. I'm stuttering a bit because I'm trying to, the words of my brain is in a bit of overload. So that was, I was selected to do that, and the recordings are still available with APA. And now I got involved with Africa, because in Africa, especially in Nigeria and in Ghana, there are some psychological associations there, and I got involved with them to try and see how we can do this. And my mind has always been about trying to look at ways of learning about everything. But learning, when I first was studying technostressology in my thesis, it was also brain overload. It was researching. I had hundreds and hundreds of pieces of paper. My wife freaked out because I spent so much paper and ink on printing. But eventually you get to narrow it down in terms of what you want and what you're doing. And you know what the easiest part is? The easiest part is to pioneer something. It is easy to regurgitate and to place the evidence because that you can put in your reference. But it's a part of pioneering something and putting something forward. So today, Technos related to stress, the Stressless Clinic is a registered name, Stressless Clinic, and so Technostressology. And Technostressology is also a registered trademark name. It's taking those chances of pioneering these kind of things. There's some more that are coming up. But all of these neuroscience aspects, I never knew that I had it in me. My son is a chiropractor by profession. He practices in Jerusalem, Israel. My other son is a chartered accountant, and my wife is an extra maths teacher. So all of that kind of side of the numbers, well, I'm not that kind of numbers person. But I seem to love, and I absolutely love this part about the body and the mind, emotions, behaviors, all of these kind of things. So coming from a very, very dark place is you have to make a decision about how you're going to continue with life. And life has its ups and downs even right now. It does. And it takes its toll. But it's trying to look at opportunities wherever we can. So in COVID-19, how do we look to try and help people in COVID-19 to deal with trauma and to deal with all of this? We have to collaborate and talk to people about it and other people in like-minded professions. So together today, we have telemedicine and we have teletherapy that work hand in hand with each other. And that shows all the medical side of things, and it then has the therapeutic side of things. Those are collaborations that we try and put together and to try and get out there. How do we reach? Well, we have Zoom, you can reach out. But then what about compliance? So now, as you know, I've sent out information about being POPI compliant, because as of the 1st of July, we'll have to be POPI compliant. But all of these things is about learning and seeing and picking up on what needs to happen. So all of these things, and you know, this comes from a part of me. Many, many years ago, I decided that I wanted, that Nando's, I thought needed to have their own branded cold drinks. So I actually designed a can, and I went to a beverage maker, and I actually sat with them and we put together some flavors of particular brands with Nando's. And called up in those days Robert Bros, and I said, would you mind, can I come and do a presentation? He said, oh, with pleasure, it sounds wonderful, let's hear about it. So I did my presentation to Nando's. They absolutely loved it. They loved the taste and whatever. But what happened? What was the problem then? They were only allowed to sell Coca-Cola in their Nando's stores, and unfortunately they couldn't put in their own brand. But it's taking a chance. It's looking for that opportunity, and everything comes from this, where you write things down and you come up with ideas. I've even done jewelry making. There's just so many aspects in life. Has just got so much to give one, and to find these things is just, they're there, but you've got to make it simple. And I think that's the secret about everything, is to make it simple. So, you know, we now have electric toothbrushes, but many years ago, I thought about the electric toothbrush. And when I was a little boy, I don't know if any of you know about motor cars, but we have a Formula One motor car. In the old days, if you remember, they had to put like an aerofoil to keep the wind, to keep the car down, that aerofoil thingy there. I wrote to Ferrari and I said to them, you know, I've got this idea of perhaps putting a wing on a car. And that was with Ferrari, and I got a beautiful letter back from Ferrari, which unfortunately I cannot find anymore. And they were enamored with this beautiful idea of having a wing on a motor car. And those are the kind of things that we all have the opportunity to do. And it's to find all those little opportunities, those little things. But there's one other thing. If you don't have family to help you, you don't have friends to have and to help and inspire you and motivate you, you won't be anywhere. And Teria is one of those people that she just sparked. I just cannot say enough about Teria. She is the most incredible person in my life. And all of you sitting around there, Pan, I've known for a long time. Pan and I have a relationship that have gone on for a long time, ups and downs. But here we are. And those are true friendships. And I think one of the challenges I also had, which I realized now, is I'm an only child. And being an only child is also a challenge, because as an only child, you have responsibilities, but you can also get away with naughty things, which I did. And I took advantage of that. And that, I think, is something that we need to remember as well. If you've got some people around you, share with them. They get to know you. You get to know them. I don't know what it's like. I've got an incredible family now. I'm an only child, but I've got an incredible family and I love them. And I've got beautiful grandchildren and I've got one on the way. And it's just, life is wonderful. But it does have its ups and downs. But it's your attitude towards it that will determine the outcome. Thank you.